right now, I have chosen this lifestyle that is very slow so that I can heal, with the understanding at the more that I heal, the more capacity I'll have to take on more things.
Welcome to That's Me, a podcast about autistic lives unfiltered. I'm your host, Corey Andreas, a late diagnosed ADHD therapist, advocate, writer, and speaker, and someone on a mission to change the way the world sees autism, one real story at a time. You know that moment when someone describes your exact experience and something in you goes, wait, that's me. That's where this podcast begins. You're here for a reason. Maybe your neurodivergence went unnoticed your whole life. Maybe every therapist you ever saw told you it was just anxiety. Maybe what you thought was depression was actually autistic burnout and nobody had the language for it. I've watched it happen in my own office and at my unmasking retreats. That moment when everything suddenly makes sense. This is neurodivergence. The world thinks it knows what autism looks like, and that picture often leaves us completely out. For those of us who mask so well, we were missed even by the professionals. So skip the textbooks, the outdated DSM, and the stereotypes. This is where you hear it from the people living it. And the professionals we bring in, they're evolving with us, not holding on to outdated ideas that left us behind. Here you'll find real stories from real people. We'll explore the full neurodivergent experience, the confusion, the overwhelm, the cost of being missed and misunderstood, and the joy that comes with finally finding people who see you. I'm so glad you're here.
Welcome, welcome. We are doing this thing. Welcome to the That's Me podcast. Today we have Austen Marie with us. Thank you so much for having me. I'm like bubbling with excitement. You'll see a lot of movement. I'm doing the same. I'm doing your wiggle with you. I feel like we just bonded. We had a little recording sesh recently for your podcast. Yes. And I was like, I could talk to this woman forever. Let's do this. It was so fun. And you tapped into such a great part of the conversation when we moved into the positive side of autism and neurodivergence. And that really touched, a lot of people that listen to my podcast. And it was so fun to focus on that for a while. And now it has kind of become my own little hyper focus of like, yes, we need to start focusing on all the good.
It's true. And it's so interesting because we just don't talk about the positive things. We're like, what positive things? In fact, I have a little questionnaire that I send out before the podcast, and it says, share something that you think is really great about yourself or extraordinary or unique. And everyone is just hating this question left and right. They're like, please don't make me say nice things about myself. I'm like, we will say nice things and we will like it.
I'm sweating right now. Like, how dare you?
I know.
How dare you ask me to say something positive about myself? Like the RSD, the imposter syndrome is so real. But I love the shift of perspective of the way that we speak about the language of neurodivergence, as instead of just pathologizing it, being like, okay, sure, we feel RSD really, really deeply, but also, have you ever seen us see something pretty?
Have you ever seen us find a rock outside or go
like the
find
sun comes up?
Do you? Wait, hold on. Before we get into the hard-hitting questions, I need to know, what is your go-to autistic move when you see something beautiful in nature? Because I have a very distinct one.
I think mine looks more and presents more as ADHD because it's full distraction, which is why when people were trying to say I was depressed, I was like, that cannot be, because when something pulls my attention and it's beautiful or captivating or interesting, it doesn't just pull my attention, it pulls my mental state. So I go from being stressed out, maybe I'm looping what all I need to do in the day. But if I see a butterfly, it pulls me out of that worry state to, I am entranced in this butterfly and I feel pure excitement, that's real. I'm not joking. That comes from my soul of pretty.
I love it.
It transports me out of a mental state that I was in, and it looks distracted.
Yes, it is a little distracted. Mine is very childlike and I can't slow it down. I can't stop it. It always happens in nature. I'll see an animal in its natural habitat, which, is not really that weird. These are animals that you've seen before. It could be a repeat animal, but every time I get super giddy and I'm happy clapping and just losing my mind. And my kids are like, Mom, please. I'm like, well,
no,
I've never seen a seal actually in the ocean, free and wild. And
I think that's the best part of it. It does feel very childlike, But
Mhm.
I feel like I see it in every age. That was kind of like what binds us as neurodivergents, is just that
Yes.
it is like in our core, we are purely feeling those emotions. When I see something really beautiful in nature, and it's always in nature,
Yeah, always.
or that's not true, artwork or really beautiful historical buildings, something that can transport you into like a different time or just appreciation. It looks childlike to us because as adults we have to tamper our emotions so much.
Yes, learn to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it really, I just feel like, is we are just embodying the feeling of appreciation, awe,
Yeah.
like, oh my God, it's so pretty, like
Yes.
you can't stop it. It's just it just happens.
Yes, and you know what? A couple summers ago, I was sitting on the beach and I was reading the Brene Brown Atlas of the Heart book,
Ooh.
and she lays it all out there with research. She's like, "Okay, let's use some big words and some research and let's discuss like happiness." And she talks about all the like warm fuzzy emotions, but she actually spelled it out. She was like, "Okay, when you're in nature and you see something beautiful and it takes over, that's not happiness, that's awe." And I was like, "Right, got it.
Yes.
Awe. We're doing awe right here." And ever since then, like sometimes when I feel really excited or really happy, or and I think I'm something, I'm like, what does Brene think I am right now? Because I've started using the word awe a lot.
Yeah, well, and I love, of course I'm going to be obsessed with that because I love being precise with language, but my therapist did the same thing where it was like it was a color circle, and at the center were, anger, sadness, the easy things, happiness to point out, and then it kind of expands in language. And I feel like that's so important for people who grew up undiagnosed because I'm so detached from my true
Yes.
feelings because I had to, those
Yes.
feeling and experiencing the world intensely as a girl. It was not labeled as autism. It was labeled as dramatic, overly
Right.
sensitive. It was labeled as something else. So I had to tamper myself and disconnect myself and second guess myself. So I almost need that language to access, like, no, it's deeper than that.
Like you're still figuring it out. And I wonder too, if you think back to being a kiddo, and we're going to go there, do you think you had those opportunities as a kid to like just lean into whatever you were feeling and act on it? Because I can't remember a time when I was like doing this as a kid.
Unfortunately, I have CPTSD, which comes with a lot of loss of memory of my childhood. So I don't have I was and I'm also a first generation American citizen. My neurodivergence was almost covered up in like all of these other things that were struggles that I were having were attributed to. Like, oh, you're an English language student. That's why you struggle with the language aspect. The learning issues are because you spoke Portuguese first, and so that was covering up my neurodivergence. And then later it was the trauma. Oh, it's the trauma that's making you feel this way. So
Yeah.
looking back, I remember I was a nail biter, I'm a skin picker, I had body dysmorphia, I was a flitter. Every year I had a new best friend. So I can look back and I'm like, that girl was so clearly
Yeah.
neurodivergent. But at the time, with the language and information that we had, how many of us were slipped under the rug because I
Oh,
was also
completely.
gifted. I was also scoring in the high ranges, and I was in all of the gifted classes. And so they didn't know what to do with me.
So when you look back on it now, do you think there was a cost for you growing up not knowing about the neurodivergence?
Absolutely. Because children are going to personalize everything anyways. And that's what drove me into teaching with my degree in psychology was the understanding of kind of started with the growth mindset. It was just like, oh my gosh, if we can get children to be thinking in a growth mindset way, then they won't feel so bad about themselves. And then that's how we heal our community. And so I think that when you give people the language for their experience, instead of it being, you're so dramatic, why do you take things so seriously? Why can't you just let it go? I can say, I have intense justice sensitivity and I have very black and white thinking. So what you
Yeah.
are saying to me does not compute, and I'm incapable of moving forward until I
Yeah.
understand. It's just a different way to live and
God.
experience life.
Yeah, and it gives you such a better idea of what's happening in your brain and how it's landing on other people. Because I think a lot of people with that same sensitivity, they don't understand why it's landing so poorly with people. They're like,
Yeah.
I'm trying to help, I'm trying to be useful, I care about what's fair for really good reasons. And why does everybody say I'm so much? And, all of those kinds of
And the
things.
way that we are forced to be so accommodating to everyone else. Like, why do we have to bend until we break? Why
Right.
why do we consider a strong sense of justice a bad
Yeah.
thing? Like, what do
Yeah.
you mean? We're morally
Yeah.
consistent. And it does make us annoying to people. And I think that it really does start with the kiddos and giving children that language and understanding, because we are social animals. And if you make people understand and kids understand that kid just needs a little bit of extra support because of this, in the same way that kiddo needs glasses,
Yes.
then accommodation is just built into our social fabric.
You have this background of being in the schools. What was that like for you during your school career?
Mostly, I'm filled with a lot of almost shame and regret that I didn't know more faster. Like, I can think of the way that I set up behavioral charts and systems in the beginning years of my teaching career. It really was a personal journey to make sure that the classroom that I was creating, the environment, was a trauma-informed, neuro-inclusive environment. And I was only able to do that because I went into teaching TK. So I wasn't restricted by this curriculum that I had to adhere to in first grade because my hands were so tied in accommodations.
Yeah.
Once I got out of that restriction and I could build my own program and have trampolines and hanging swings and balance
Yes.
boards and sensory bins, once I did that in my classroom and saw the change in children and the way they approached coming to school, being in school, how they spoke about themselves, my tolerance for looking at how we traditionally treat children in traditional classrooms came down to a zero. And so it was really difficult for me to spend a year with kiddos. And of course, I'd always find like the 3 kids who need most support. And I'm going to
Yes.
advocate for them. I'm going to try to get them SBITs. I'm going to make sure that they know how to use fidgets appropriately, how to ask for accommodations. But then they would move out of my classroom and then they could not utilize any of the tools that I had just spent a year teaching them how to utilize. And so it felt like I was spinning my wheels. And I was also going uphill because I was being met with an administration that, why do you care so much if kids are diagnosed? Why that I was actually asked that. I burnt myself out instead of being able to disengage and like pace myself and not take the system personally. I took it very personally. I wasn't healed enough to have the
Yeah.
stamina I needed to continue in the education system, and that's on me not knowing my own neurodivergence and burning out. And so I have burnt out and now I don't have the capacity to
Yeah.
re-enter. And so now I'm doing my education through my platform, and I'm not an expert, but I like to reach out to experts like yourself and get this conversation normalized.
Honestly, I don't think it requires being an expert. I think that's where we're getting this all wrong. I almost cringe sometimes when I hear the word expert in certain settings because it's like, yeah, okay, sure. There are people who study these things, but it's so fascinating to me because a lot of people I really respect in life have had these very unique paths to their field and paths to helping and paths to whatever they're doing. But it's interesting how little we listen to people who are living this, as like the actual experts. I can't tell you how many times like a psychiatrist, a psychologist, someone with a PhD and big fancy credentials has tried to tell me about neurodivergence. And I'm like, so are you neurodivergent yourself? You're not. Okay. Well, here's a couple things I know about me, my family, everyone around me. Like, I think I might know something about it, but I think most of the things that all of us who are doing this kind of work are learning are through like the actual people that are in front of us. I mean, we have no research. So
I mean, I 1000% attribute this path that I'm on to TikTok. It was when TikTok was like in its purest form, where we were just getting in front of a camera and sharing our experiences. It was through just consuming all of that content of women being like, yo, do you experience this too? And me being like, yes, there's a name for this. because before we were sharing our stories and specific things that we were experiencing, it was just me being a weirdo. It was just me being a quirky weirdo, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And so like
Yes.
that is why I feel like has been this collective shift, because
Yeah.
now we're like, oh, like that's not a me problem. That's just how my brain is
Right.
wired, and you can just do this and it would be no big deal.
Yeah.
I think it's through us being able to connect with each other and share our related experiences that kind of validated that, oh, life isn't just hard for me and easy for everyone else. It's because of this and this. And so I really feel like it depersonalizes it and then brings us
Yes.
into community, which has been
It
healing.
does. That's exactly what it is. It's like what we learned in school group therapy would be and often isn't. Group therapy has become social media.
Yes.
I mean, when you go online and you see some woman and she's like telling you your life story and you're like, "Oh, so okay, this isn't just me being the one weird friend
Yes.
in my friend group that never stops talking, that's always putting my foot in my mouth, that has all these intense interests. Like this is actually the brain that I have. Where are the rest of the brains like
Or
this? How do I get more
I'm
people
not
around
just
me?"
rude for interrupting all the time. This is actually me showing engagement in the conversation, but I thought I was just impulsive and rude and had bad manners, like, and
Yes.
then when you find people who talk like that, it is almost like a recharge, because it's like, I don't have to slow myself down. I don't have to like remember where we're at on this conversation, because it's not going to be linear. Come with me on this journey, man.
Coming back.
Come with me. Like, we're going to talk about A, B, C, D, H, and then like maybe we'll
Yes.
jump back. And it feels good to just be able to authentically speak.
100%. We have been doing these unmasking retreats for a couple years now, and there was one specific retreat. I think I will probably never forget this, but there was this one woman and she came and I didn't know her very well, and we were at the retreat, and I remember within a couple hours I was just watching her, and she talked really fast like I do, and she was just fascinating. Like every time somebody was talking about something, she was like, "Oh, I read a book about that. Oh, you like to make pizza? I like to make pizza. Have you ever been to this place and this place and this place?" And it just felt like every time she like zigzagged to something new, I was there with her. And I was like, yes, I have been there. And yes, I did read that book. And I remember just like at the end of the day, my brain did not know what to do. And I was thinking to myself, I have never felt like I could look at another person and be like, I think that's what I come across like. It was like looking in a mirror in the gentlest way. The whole house was like enjoying
Yeah.
her. I'm enjoying her. And she seems to enjoy her. I wonder if I can, kind of look at myself that way instead of you talk too much,
Yeah.
you're all over the place. Why don't you finish a thought? Because it was beautiful to see that same communication in someone else. And I hold on to
Well,
that.
that representation matters so much. Seeing yourself in someone else, I really feel like this awareness, this collective awareness that we're having for the nervous system is seeping into even our pop culture, because you see characters in cartoons and movies where you're like, that's a neurodivergent. Like,
Yes,
and
I know
the
that.
traits, and that person isn't there to be laughed at or anything. It's celebrated. It's Moana too, I think, has someone who the character is constantly reinventing her ideas and experimenting, and it's shown in this very positive way. My kids saw themselves in that, and it was also a great way to show, see, you never give up, just keep on trying. I think that when we normalize it between each other and as mothers, because if you grew up undiagnosed, a lot of us recognize our neurodivergence because we saw it in our children. And you're like, wait,
Yes.
like it's
I've seen this before.
it's a direct
Mhm.
mirror to it. And so I think
Yeah.
awareness, it's going to normalize it to where my goal is our children walk around not feeling weird for having to say like, can I have like headphones on, please? Or to advocate for themselves, and it not be like oh my God, this is so embarrassing. And I think it starts with when I go to restaurants, in front of my children, I'm like, I'm autistic and I have food preferences, and just normalizing it and just
Yes.
being,
Yes, not making it
no,
weird. Yes,
it's not
100%.
weird.
The kiddos are often we have 4 kiddos, we have a big blended family, and many, many different ways that neurodivergence is showing up in our house. One of our kiddos is much more kind of like an internal kid. Like he doesn't really want to talk about his day. We are just bothering him by asking him all these ridiculous questions when he gets home. And I remember one of our helpers that we were working with him was just like, did you ever think that maybe he doesn't want to share his day with you? School is not fun for him. That is not what he wants to talk about. And if you're going to try and pull these details out about the day, that's really for you and not him. It felt like a knife to the heart because I was like, she's absolutely right. He doesn't want to talk about his day. And we're so worried about, can he talk about his day though? If we ask these questions a different way, can we get something? We're doing this all wrong. We need to ask him about what he wants to talk about, when he wants to talk about it. That's what I want, is to talk about your day. And so even like within families, I think that's why it's so hard for parents to grasp how neurodivergence can be both of these things, is that one kid doesn't want to talk almost at all, and someone else never stops talking. And same brain, makes perfect sense, right?
Well, and that's the thing. It's almost incredibly hard to explain, but then also at the same time, it's incredibly simple because we are living our entire experience, especially as parents, just through the nervous system. And every choice that I make, every decision that I am making is to make sure that I am creating a safe environment for my child's nervous system regulation. And that's like in every micro decision. Did I bring the right snack? Are their clothes comfortable for them? And that piece of it is really hard to explain to someone who doesn't care or understand about nervous system regulation, because we still view it as just like calm down, stop it. Like it's something that we can consciously control. And my goal is through language, making people understand this is out of their control, not a conscious choice. When you see behavior that you are saying is an issue, that is their body's nervous system communicating. They are talking through that. And I was dysregulating my oldest because I am a talker. I regulate through talking. He doesn't like talking. And so I was dysregulating him by picking him up and trying to pull out what was his part of his day. And once I shifted to how can I support his regulation, it was by creating that silent space for him so that he can come home and collapse and have zero expectations on him. And he talks to me more now, And so it goes against everything that I thought I knew to be a good parent. And instead, I'm having to just take away and shed all of these parenting ideals and what it should look like and stereotypes, and instead being like, what does this child's regulation need? Because one child needs quiet and isolation, and this child needs to be deeply squeezed and has his toes on me at all times and won't let go and needs to feel regulation. It's hard to explain how in one household you are 2,000 different people to all of these different needs.
All the time.
And it's exhausting.
All the time. I always wonder if this is from being in the schools for as long as we were. I remember talking to parents when I worked in the school, and now I wish I could take all this back, but just saying, well, you have to ask better questions if they're not talking to you, like all the different things. And now I'm like, it's okay. If he doesn't want to talk about his day, it's absolutely okay. And I watch all of our kids just light up when they talk about their thing. And I'm just increasingly aware, and maybe it's just because there's so many neurodivergent people around me, but how often do we impose what we want to talk about on kids? How's school? You're getting so big. They don't want to tell you about that. They want to tell you about the things that they're obsessed with. And a lot of times that's not what we're interested in. And so now I've just become so used to being like, what are you obsessed with? Please tell me everything about that weird game you're playing that I really don't want to know a lot of details about. But for you, I do, because I want you to share with me. It's not about the game. I don't care about the game, but I do care that your whole face lights up when you're talking about it. And that you feel connection when somebody's interested in your interests. I love that.
And I feel so grateful that my kids were still very young. I was a TK teacher and I was doing so much research in helping kids regulate, because I very quickly learned that to access a child's ability to reach the curriculum, I had to create an environment for their nervous systems to be able to hit that. That became like a core foundation of how I had relationship with children. And it's a knowing that I forget other people don't know, that if you want to have any kind of true relationship with a child, you have to build that environment so that they can enter into a flow state. And then you're openly communicating and they're sharing with you instead of you pulling from them. I really am hopeful that through this type of work, that will then permeate the education system. So that's how we approach children, is getting them to be in an environment where they feel regulated, to not only access the curriculum and be able to absorb it, but to be in relationship with their teachers and the students with them, because otherwise they're shut off and they're anxious and they're dysregulated and, and
Yes.
so I really think that it starts there, and you become a better teacher, you become a better parent, because it forces presence. It forces you to be in regulation with them.
When kids are, well, anybody, kids, adults, it doesn't matter. When people feel safe and when they feel like you want to be there with them and you care how comfortable they are, they're totally different
Yeah.
people. And I think that gets lost in the masses. I feel for teachers now because I think they have so much on their plate and so many kids to care for. But at the same time, the system feels so broken to me because you think of special interests and nervous system involvement, of like how many people regulate through their special interests. You go to school, you have this opportunity where it could either be amazing for you to learn or it could be terrible, depending upon what you learn. And so many parents will say, but yeah, but the real world isn't like this. They can't just love one thing in the real world. I'm like, okay, so a couple things. I think that you can. I think we should probably ask some of the people that are really famous and have had incredible success in their lives, and then some of the people that are like everyday famous and that are just doing amazing things. The people that own the coffee shop, and the people that are running their own business and taught themselves everything they're doing. Like, there's a lot of people that are in this monotropic kind of lifestyle, but we think for some reason in school that it has to be, oh, no, you have to be able to do everything. This brain is not meant for that.
And not only that, but like, I don't accept that as an excuse to keep doing it. Just because that's how it is, why are we now understanding that we are putting children in situations where they're dysregulated, and then that is causing them to have a negative self-concept about themselves by the time they're 7? And we're just gonna be like, well, that's how the real world is. Why?
That's how it works.
Why does the real world have to be like that? Maybe we can decide that we care about people and children enough to create safe environments. Once that became the point, I could not then look at my student and be like, I'm going to make you do this because what's important is that you comply.
Yes.
I don't care about compliance. Safety over compliance every day. As long as that student's being safe, whatever, I think that, again, it goes back to, then if you create that environment, then others people's dysregulation becomes their own. Even children can then, my own kids can look at a substitute teacher's behavior and be like, she was so dysregulated and being so mean, and not take it on as I was yelled at, there was being bad. It really does just take that shift of perspective. And I think school is where that would really manifest into like having a safer society where we just turn off the big light.
So when you got out of the school system and now you're in this whole different world, what do you do on your end as the adult neurodivergent person in the household to just regulate your own nervous system? What does that look like for you?
Well, I am an auditory processor, and I guess I would fall under conscious parenting. So my kids don't get punished, or they have consequences, and we have discussions. So if they do something that I have to address in a moment of dysregulation, they are like, oh God, we're going to talk about this, aren't we? It's like, yes, yes,
here we go.
So it is, it's a lot of me vocalizing my own nervous system energy, like where I'm at. And through that, I'm also reparenting myself and becoming aware. So for example, it's also recognizing I can get dysregulated because I'm too excited. So I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. I was getting dysregulated, so I took myself to the river with my coffee and grounded myself a little bit, and, made sure I came back and kept myself grounded. And so I really, because my life is so centered around checking in on my nervous system regulation, being very mindful of it, it does keep me out of society in a lot of ways. Like, for example, I no longer feel like I can be a teacher. I have a business now where I'm by myself cleaning houses with headphones on. I've just adjusted my lifestyle so that for right now, while I'm in the active process of healing my nervous system and recovering from burnout, that is the sole focus. And so I'm lucky and privileged that I get to live a nervous system life.
Isn't that amazing? And that's the interesting part of it when you realize it's not necessarily about the job. It's not necessarily about the big picture. It's about the full big picture of your nervous
Yeah.
system. Your nervous system could probably be comfortable in many, many different roles and figuring out what do I need right
Yes.
now? Because I think at different periods in life, it's very different
Oh, yeah.
things. Like I look back at capacity I had when I was younger and I'm like, look at that was a really tough nervous system job. And I did that and I loved it, but I loved it to a
Yes.
point. There had to be an end. So, do you feel like this is sort of like a journey of understanding your nervous system and it's like changing as you
What
go, the more you understand?
1000%. And it's also having faith and understanding the nervous system and also the stress response. So I am still recovering from a divorce. With that comes losing not being a teacher anymore, comes losing healthcare, having the support system like kind of taken out from you when you decide I'm not going to work this job anymore because I'm burnt out. I
I can't.
went into that understanding like, okay, I'm not going to have health insurance, private health insurance anymore. I'm going to have to be living paycheck to paycheck. And I'm entering into poverty with the choice of it is worth it for me to be able to slow my life down. And so
Yeah.
right now I have chosen this lifestyle that is very slow so that I can heal with the understanding at the more that I heal, the more capacity I'll have to take on more things. I can either grow my cleaning business or hopefully my podcast will be growing so much that I am able to speak at events and speak to schools and share this information about regulation and connection and stuff. So I really see it as like a shedding of a skin. I was that
Yes.
person who did not understand, and that showed up in my relationships and my in what I would accept from people as friends, as coworkers, as lovers and stuff. And now I'm shedding that and I'm walking into this new path of understanding my nervous system, which means I know my needs, I know my limits, I know what I need from a partner. And so I'm kind of blazing on this path like it has to be better than what that was.
So many people that I work with are in burnout, like really in burnout. And often that's when they come to therapy and they will say, I don't know what to do. Like, there are no good jobs there. I don't know what this looks like. And I always feel like it doesn't look like anything like what you think it
Yeah.
looks like. It's not the perfect job. It's not. It's often what you're describing. It's stages of things where people are like, okay, for right now, this is what we're
Yeah.
doing. We make ends meet for a little bit, and then we figure out the next step. Because you almost can't imagine what it would be like at full capacity until you start to heal from burnout. Like
No. And
when you're in the beginning of it, you just need nothing. You're
yes.
like, I just need healing and we'll
Yes,
figure it all out.
exactly. And it puts everything in perspective towards like, I really don't need much. The slowing down, the getting off the wheel was hard. And we have, with especially in our society, the way that we really idolize consumerism and, labels and stuff, it is hard to kind of purposely get off of that and be like, you know what, for me right now, I need to live slowly. And if that means not consuming, I'm okay with that. It feels weird because I'm in this society, I live here, but I'm living outside of it in a way. I have to participate because I live here, but I choose to not live within it because it's too stressful and I don't like it.
Totally get that. And I think it's tricky too when you do start accommodating yourself and you feel yourself checking
Hmm.
out. I am not participating in that party or that get together or going to that happy hour or whatever it is people are doing. I find a lot of us we like
Yeah.
it and we don't want to go back. So, do you ever feel the opposite like I need to push myself some of the time to get out there or to be doing things that feel outside my comfort zone?
No, I feel very interested in returning back to myself. I think that
Yeah.
being undiagnosed, growing up undiagnosed, and then also being a first generation American where we were asked to assimilate by giving up our culture. I feel very starved of culture. I feel very starved of who am I and what do I like and what are my interests. And so I'm finding myself now by kind of getting back to the roots of things. And I'm very interested in indigenous cultures and how to grow food in the climate that I live in and just kind of feeling very much grounding in a literal way. Like I am grounding. And I don't think I could go back because it felt like I was floating and I kept trying to grasp at if I put this mask on, if I do this, maybe then I'll be accepted. And I'm kind of letting that go and just like letting myself fall on my face and be like, but who am I? Like at the core, like at my roots, the ones that I had to ignore and cover up. Who is she?
I wonder what you're finding, like, as you rediscover yourself. Has there been anything that you have figured out about yourself in the last couple of years or something that feels really exciting for you?
I think it's been a lot of looking at things and renaming them in positive ways of like recognizing like you are a lot stronger and more resilient than what you are. And, you know, I think that what I am finding is like I'm kind of backpedaling like the courage behind my voice and trying to like look back and look at things that I maybe didn't notice were strengths or that I felt ashamed about and instead going back and reframing it like no, like you are intelligent, you have the experience, you have the education, you've done things that have been noticed by other people to kind of validate myself. My voice does matter. Maybe
Yes.
I am worth loving. Oh yeah, like my experience is meaningful. And so it's been a lot of that. I'm going backwards and reframing things and like building that self-love from the back end.
That was the whole inspiration behind this podcast. So many people, like you said, are watching on social media and going, that's me, that's me, that's me. And they're starting to understand, okay, this neurodivergence piece makes everything make sense. But then once you figure that out, that's kind of the beginning. Like
Yes.
that's not the end, that's the very beginning. So now you're like, okay, great, that's really helpful. But now what? So it really invites you to recognize both the trauma and the really sad stuff of like, whoa, I've been living for other people my whole life. For you, what was that all like when you realized neurodivergence was going on for you? Tell me more about that part of your
When you're
story.
like, oh my God, my personality is trauma responses. Like, wait.
Whole personality is a problem.
Like, dang. Well, mine's so layered because I've been in therapy for so long because of my adverse childhood and my natural inclination towards psychology. My first psychology class was in high school. I took a psychology college course senior year and I was obsessed immediately.
Yes.
And I've always been a huge consumer of information. I would read too much. I was understanding like the hippocampus is in charge of this with my amygdala. It's probably like Swiss cheese. Like I was understanding myself
Yes.
in an anatomical way first. And it really didn't hit in a spiritual way until I had my own children. And then it became like a I understand the experience that my child is having. Like it kind of made it into a reality instead of just something I'm feeling in my head.
Yeah.
And it was through growing as a mother and really understanding the experience my child was having and believing him and validating that it was as intense and that he got to have those feelings and making space for big feelings.
Yes.
Also learning and understanding that I was in a relationship with someone who presents and acts like a narcissist. So I was in therapy with someone which was so great for my literal brain to be able to explicitly teach you how to look for gaslighting and manipulation and
Yeah.
teaching you how that feels in your body so that I could then because I did not know I was neurodivergent, a lot of my neurodivergent qualities were being manipulated and used against me. And so it
Right.
was through this learning about this, how to protect myself, how to gray wall, how to protect myself like in a mental capacity, that it made me understand my own brain so much that I could then validate my experiences and then label them as neurodivergent as well. It was through hearing other women talk about it and their
Yeah.
experience of how do you explain coercion? It is so difficult if you're not like, I have a black eye to be like, I'm being abused, like,
Right.
so it was just through consuming so much information about
Yeah.
that led me to being like, I have these sensitivities and the way that he could manipulate my cycle of thinking because I have black and white thinking and using Darvo against me. And so it was a validation. It was just such a validation. I know what my truth is. You can't talk me out of it. I know what I am feeling and I have language for it now. And so it was really validating. And then the crash came. And so
Yeah. And then
and then the crash came. So
yeah.
I'm very much still in the thick of the healing for it. But it was like it wasn't one large aha. It was such a journey and like a click into place, like, oh, I understand this now. And then, oh, yep, that makes sense. And that makes sense. And
Yeah. You really you put it so well. When people figure it out and people arrive there at different places and at different timing and all that, but a lot of people do get there through other people. They get there because something bad is happening in a relationship or something is going on with their kids, and then holds the mirror up to things that have been going on. And so many of us are in those unhealthy relationships. I mean, just so many people. I guess I'm not shocked at this point. It really is just a painful reality that I'm forever telling other therapists. When I do these assessments, especially with women, I'll say, did you find yourself to be more vulnerable when you were younger? And their first answer will be no, a lot of times. And then I will have to spell it out and be like, hold on, before we go to no, so that might mean you were 15 and dating a 30-year-old. Oh, yeah, no, that happened. I can't tell you how many women have told me that. Like, oh, this 27-year-old was living in my house with my parents when I was 14. What? Like, and it's like, hold on a second. That is abuse. No judgment to, anything, your parents, nothing, but like, just to like call that what it is, that's not okay. Your parents knew that and didn't protect you. And why does that happen? Neurodivergent parents who are maybe not understanding how dangerous these things are. So it becomes this thing where when you meet people who are in relationships with narcissists or relationships that are unhealthy, even just emotionally unhealthy, it's so much harder to get someone to go, no, this is not okay.
Yeah.
Like, this is not okay on any
Well,
level.
I mean, and then think about, of course you're going to accept this behavior when you were a child and you were crying because this jacket is itchy, you were still forced to put it on because your experience was invalidated all the time. You were in class and you needed to move your body and you were told you couldn't, or you got in trouble for
Stop
it.
that.
And so it's like, when I say it starts in the classroom, it's because that is where we put our children to develop. And like, if we are if we're not allowing them to have autonomy over their nervous system regulation, and even if that means like to be able to wiggle it out or stuff, then they're gonna grow up expecting for their nervous system and their comfortability not to be respected. You're gonna accept when someone tells you like you're dramatic, you're expecting too much. When you love yourself because you know what nervous system safety feels like, because you were granted that safe space as a child, when someone dysregulates it, you don't need the name for like, this is the exact kind of abuse that you're giving to me.
Right.
You feel it in your body.
Right.
You're like, no, you are bad. You make me feel bad. I might not have the language for it, but like, I know that not everyone does this to my body and that this is not okay.
Yes.
That's where I think that we shift it. It's that we've gotten to prove that you're bad. What kind of abuse? Like, like we make the victims prove the pain that they've had, when instead it's like, no, the fact that you felt the pain is enough. That's enough of the reason.
It's enough. Yeah, you can just leave because it doesn't
but
feel good.
As when you grow up without having that respected, just let your kid say no to you. Let your kid wear shorts instead of pants if they really want to. Let them not go to that birthday party or that family event. And then when they grow up and someone asks them to do something that they're uncomfortable with, they know that they have the right to say no. They just have to practice.
You can say no. I can't tell you how hard that has been in blending our families, and that, I have been going through a lot of different things with neurodivergent kiddos for much longer, and my kiddos are older. And when we first all came together, it was kind of like, actually, they don't have to do it. Like, and we would have to like recalibrate all the time. Like, they don't have to finish that plate. Like, they actually don't have to take their headphones off. Like, they don't have to go to that birthday party because I don't want to either. Like, and just understanding, I don't think parents are wrong for like having that instinct. I think it's just realizing you have been sold that. You have been told that this compliance, if you don't, then blank. And I'm always like, then what? Then you don't go to the party? Then you're wearing headphones in public? Then you're only eating 5 foods? Like, what is bad? That is actually really okay.
Exactly. And also, you're asking me to put your own regulation in front of my child's. Just because you feel uncomfortable about the way that we're presenting, it might not be socially normal. You're uncomfortable with that. That's your own dysregulation. I'm going to let him step outside and sit by himself if he needs to. He doesn't need to come back in. He doesn't need to participate. And I'm just going to say, no, he's overstimulated. He just needs alone time. And you can feel uncomfortable with that if you want, but as a parent, it is my job to step in between the way that we try to push people past their capacity and model to my children, like, you don't have to. You don't have to. Otherwise, you're going to end up in burnout for 4 years like your mother.
We don't want that.
We don't want that.
I can hear myself talking sometimes with people who are very much in compliance mindset, and I know what I sound like. I'm like, I know that you think that this house is just everybody doing what they want, and maybe to some degree there is some truth to some of it. But I wish people could put down the walls that they have from the things that they've been taught and ask themselves, much like we do with generational trauma, are we just spanking our kids because our parents spanked us, or are we spanking them because it makes any sense at all? And my thing as a parent was very defiant. Like, I'm not doing anything that I think is stupid. Like, if I didn't like it, I'm not doing it. And maybe that's a little PDA. I don't know. But I
It
do
works.
think like a lot of things, I'm just like, prove to me that this is actually as important as we think it is. And it's been really freeing because I was wound pretty tight. I was rule follower times 1,000, like straight A's. I didn't want anybody to be pissed off. But for the wrong
Yeah.
reasons, not because of this like love of learning, which I do side note have, but I was doing it to not get in trouble. And no one was mad at me. There was no trouble. So I think the difference being I want my kids reading because they love learning. I want them getting good grades because they're doing well and they enjoy it. But if you don't, I don't care what your grade is.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, and that's so, not everyone agrees, but
Well, and I think it's just such a misunderstanding of what we're doing and how we're parenting. You see it as like you let your child do anything. You don't punish your children and all this stuff. But it's deeper than that. It's that I recognize that when because I come from a very strict like Catholic upbringing where children are seen and not heard and you respect me because I'm bigger than you. I come from that background. So my natural inclination as a parent is to like, you listen to me, like that
Yeah.
is my go-to. And I have to stop myself and realize this is my dysregulation. I'm uncomfortable because
Yes.
when I was a child, I wasn't allowed to talk back. And because I was this little
Right.
autistic girl with pattern recognition who had PDA,
Yes.
I was always being in trouble for being like, this doesn't make sense. Why are we doing it this way?
Yes, all the
I was
time.
in trouble for needing clarity and having pattern
Yes.
recognition, but that was viewed as being sassy and
Sassy.
or, like my intelligence was used against me. Like, you think you're so smart. And so like
All the
when
time.
my children are talking back to me, my inclination is to shut it down because that was not allowed. And I have to stop myself and be like, why do I feel so upset about this? Like, what if
Yes.
he wants to debate me about what we're having for dinner? Okay, lay out your argument, sir. Let the judge hear it and we can
Let's go.
like I just
What you got?
I had to stop myself from realizing all of this upset and this need to control my children and their behavior is all my own. This is all me trying to keep my
Yeah.
own little my own little child safe inside, but they're in a safe environment. And the environment at home that I have is different. And I don't have to parent in the way that I was parented, but it feels really off at first.
Yes.
It
Yes.
feels really wrong.
It does. So we had this one moment where I remember my husband, he was saying something to our youngest and it was very literal, whatever his response was. Like basically like, why do you get to yell at me and I don't get to, like you tell me not to be rude, but you're allowed to be rude. And he was like, you don't get to talk to me. I was like, no, hold on. Like, let's have a little side talk. And I was like, he's asking you a question. And I just feel the need to remind you, I'm not trying to jump in and get it. But like, he is
Yeah.
legitimately asking you. And that's the same thing that we will have arguments about. Why are you getting mad at me when I don't do this? But when you don't do this, it's okay. We're having the same thing happen with everyone. Sometimes you're trying to do is say, I don't understand. Make these rules make sense to me. And I know that makes you mad. But maybe it's a good thing that we talk about hypocrisy. Because you can say to a kid, there are different rules for different situations.
Exactly.
You're right. People expect different things of adults than they do as kids. That's frustrating, isn't it? And that's not saying be rude to your dad, but it's saying, yeah, it's confusing, isn't it? Like, yeah, sometimes the rules are totally different for two different people for no reason. Wow. How about that you noticed that? That's pretty impressive. What would have happened if instead of people being like, you're a smart aleck, you're always talking back, if people were just like, wow, you're really curious, aren't you? It's the same behavior.
It's the same behavior. And it's like we put this bad intent behind children's questions. It's just very interesting the way that we treat children. I think it's very, very weird. It's probably my own autism because I'm not good at math. I'm not good at numbers. I have no spatial awareness, but I have always been really, really good with children and animals. I think that it is something that I'm grateful for because I see other adults forgetting or not realizing that children are fully human and that there's so much wisdom to be learned from them. They know so much. And because they haven't been beaten down and put into a mold, they actually like can teach us how to be better people. And I think that like it's just something that I'm glad for my neurodivergence divergence when it comes to that, because I think I do have the ability to see how important children and nature are. And that's where I find my joy, because I'm like, you guys, the good is here. We just need to focus on them. They're short. Look down.
It's so true. And we lose that. And you brought up my very favorite thing to talk about ever, which is autistic joy. I remember when my kids are little, when you start doing things with kids that maybe you didn't do as a kid, maybe you did, you start to realize, holy cow, going to the zoo is a very important experience in our life. Like, you are going to watch this little kid see a giraffe for the first time, and that's damn near the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. Your little face and that big giraffe. What are we even doing on this planet? Like, it's huge. And you realize that. And I think we're so busy. We're on our phones. We're too busy taking pictures. And I did all the wrong things too. And then we realized that beautiful thing that just happened. It wasn't just beautiful for your kid. It was beautiful for you. It's beautiful for the giraffe. Like, all of that. And I think kids have such a way of teaching us, keep learning, get new hobbies, get new interests, try something new, make a new friend, do things that are hard, start a new sport. It's so great to see them trying all these new things. And then as adults, I'm just going to do the same that, and I'm like, they're so brave.
Yes.
They're so brave. We need to pay attention to them.
They're so brave. They're so curious. They're empathetic and compassionate. And I think they're the real role models. Like, we just really should try to be more like our kids.
All of these things that we've talked about, I'm so interested in where the joy is for you these days. That's something that I just love to ask people. What is bringing you joy at the moment? Big, small, anything in between?
For me, where I feel aligned is where I find the joy the most, is when I am talking with someone in a way where I gave them access to that language, or where they finally feel like, I am so glad someone finally hears me, because I'm so sick of people telling me this is just a phase for my kid, but it is a 1 hour meltdown every single day to put socks on. And I'm so happy to hear someone validate that and not just brush it off. So I think for me, I'm feeling really called to that mission. And so when it lands and when I get feedback, whether it be from a subscriber or someone commenting on a YouTube video of, oh my gosh, this is my experience, thank you so much for giving me these words, I feel like all of that stuff that happened to me, all of the trauma, all of the negative relationships that I had to have, that was meant for a reason. And I've been able to use that to alchemize it into understanding, so I can take that and give it back to people so that they don't have to experience it, but they'll be able to like take that knowledge and like pass it forward. And I really think that this is the way that I can help create a better world for my kids. And that's the goal, is that I try to do the best I can in my own home to create a safe environment for their nervous systems, but I love them so much. I want them to have a safe world, not just a safe home.
Yes.
And I think that if I can soften someone's heart, if I can make a teacher look at behavior and think, what's that behavior trying to tell me, then I am one step closer to making this world a kinder, safer place for every child.
Love that. I love that so much. It's the most important thing you can do. And whether it's with schools, whether it's with some mom that is listening to your podcast, whether it's with some person you meet in the grocery store, I feel like that is huge work on every level. And it's all important. I honestly think that people that are doing podcasts, that are doing social media, that are writing, that are putting stuff out there, I feel like that's more important than anything else. Like, people don't realize the power that they have. This moment where you listen to a podcast and you're like, oh my God, that is my actual life. That is exactly what I'm thinking and feeling. So many people I talk to have had those sobbing in your car podcast moments. And that's huge. Not to mention every kid that's coming to your house that your friends bring over, or your kids' friends that they bring over, whatever, they're getting the same treatment that you're giving your own kids too, like a safe household.
And it's what I have capacity for. This is what I have at my disposal. I have this experience. This is what I can do for it. If, I don't have any other talents or skills to be able to,
I don't believe that, but okay.
If I had the math capabilities of my oldest. Maybe I would go into science and research to be able to help figure out the endocrine system of the neurodivergence. Or, if I had the capacity to go back to school and get my degree, maybe I could teach, but I don't have that capacity. This is what I can do, and it's to tell stories and it's to share stories. That's how I can impact the world. And the beautiful thing about neurodivergence is that we all have such specific talents and we can change the world in every aspect because we're all different at something different. And so this is just the way that I can look inside and see, like, what is my natural talent? What am I naturally inclined to do? And it's to yap. I'm a great yapper. And so I'm going to use that natural skill to try to create and hopefully inspire other people to lead with kindness and love.
You know what I keep thinking too, and I thought this the first time we met, I have so many women who come in and they're like, oh, I've been told over and over again that I can't be autistic because I'm so chatty, I'm so outgoing, I'm so easy to engage in conversation. And I think to myself, okay, you have found the right place. Not all of us are sitting in the corner not saying anything, although there's plenty of times when I do that. But this is also neurodivergence.
Exactly.
This is being an autistic woman that has a lot to say. And I'm sure that that can look different in different settings and depending upon who's there and all of that. But I people who don't really sit with autism like you and I do and don't have this day-to-day experience with it, they need to know that this is what autistic women look like also.
Yeah. And I'm happy to be that like weirdo model. Like, I look up when I talk a lot and I got the wiggles and I jiggle when I talk, and I'm happy to be that model to point to and be like, look at like if she can do it, you can do it.
So we have to tell people how they can find you.
Yes.
All right. So you have this fabulous podcast. Tell us about what your podcast is all about.
I do, my little baby. It's called the Neuro-Spicy Mom Pod. And although it has mom in it, it's really not a parenting podcast. It's really for those of us who grew up undiagnosed, who are either parenting neurodivergent kiddos or who are reparenting themselves. And it's just a space where I bring amazing people like yourself on to talk about neurodivergence, to validate our experience, to normalize it, and to make space for it because our voices matter too. Our experiences are nuanced and beautiful, and we deserve a place to say it. So I'm on the Patreon and then also on Instagram and Facebook, _neurospicy mama. But on YouTube, I'm also the Neurospicy Mom Pod. So you can find me anywhere and everywhere.
Yeah. And what can people find on your Patreon community?
So on the Patreon, I have different levels so you can see video episodes. I'm going to be dropping more casual conversations on there. It's called Neurospicy Tea Time. So it's more just my listeners coming on and they want to share their neurodivergent experience. Like, let's chat about it. And message boards, kind of just a place to come and breathe and hang out for a little bit.
I love it. I love it so much. You were such good people. I don't know how we connected in this world, but it was just immediately we started talking and I was like, you're my people.
I stalked you. I definitely was like, hey, I slid into those DMs like, hey, girl.
My husband is forever telling me, if you ever leave me, it's going to be for some person who slid into your DMs to talk about nerdy autism stuff. And I'm like, yep, that's accurate.
Do you want to I don't know, like live with a bunch of other neurodivergent women and like...
Do you want to talk about books for an unusually long amount of time?
Yes, I do. Yes, actually, that's exactly what I want to do.
Yes, I do. So I just know that this will not be the last time that we talk. I can't wait to do this again. I am so, so grateful for you to come on. And thank you for just being real and amazing and wonderful and beautiful and a fabulous
Thank you so much for having me. I was so excited when you asked me. I was like, yes, let's keep this conversation moving.
Thanks so much for listening. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. If you'd like to learn more about high masking, late diagnosed autism, check out our Instagram @neurocorious. And if you're interested in getting all the details of our unmasking retreats, please check out my website, CoreyAndreas.com. You can also find more content on our YouTube channel @That'sMePod. And if you haven't already, please subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss an episode. We can't wait to see you next time.